It began the way many life-altering stories do, without spectacle or warning, hidden inside moments too small to inspire fear. A forgotten thread in a conversation, keys misplaced more than once, a sentence trailing off before it could land. At first, these moments were dismissed as stress, fatigue, the ordinary clutter of a full life. Mark laughed them away. Kelly smiled through them, and the family kept moving forward, because that is what families do when the alternative feels too frightening to consider. But as the days went on, the small lapses began to accumulate into something heavier. His appetite diminished. Meals became symbolic instead of sustaining. Evenings ended early, marked by long, unfamiliar naps. The house grew quieter, not calm, but suspended, as if everyone was holding their breath without realizing it. When laughter leaves a room, there is a brief space where concern replaces denial. When humor no longer softens uncertainty, that moment arrives quietly, without announcement. Kelly noticed it in the way Mark stared at his plate, in how he seemed distant even while sitting beside her. The laughter that once filled their routines thinned, replaced by careful glances and half-formed questions. Time itself felt distorted, stretching endlessly in some moments and disappearing entirely in others. The family sensed something was wrong long before any doctor confirmed it, because the body often whispers long before it ever screams. Fear did not rush in all at once. It seeped slowly, settling into the corners of the day and refusing to leave. Then came the diagnosis that altered the air around them. It did not arrive with drama or softened language. It came clinically, wrapped in medical terminology that landed heavier than emotion ever could. Cancer was the word that changed everything, sitting between them like something both fragile and dangerous. Doctors spoke carefully, outlining progression, explaining options, emphasizing uncertainty. There were no promises, only probabilities. Kelly listened closely, absorbing every word, while Mark sat still, trying to process a future that had suddenly fractured. The room felt smaller after that conversation, as though the walls had leaned inward and the life they knew had been quietly rerouted without their consent. Choosing calm in the face of fear, Mark responded with a steadiness that surprised even those closest to him. He said, "Okay," not because he understood what lay ahead, but because it was the only word that fit the moment. It was not cinematic bravery or resignation, just something quieter, more human. Kelly watched him carefully, searching for signs of collapse, aware of how thin the line was between composure and breaking. The children reacted in their own ways, each finding a personal path through the shock. Schedules shifted, priorities rearranged. Without discussion, the family moved into action. Love became logistical, support turned into structure. Fear was acknowledged, but it was not allowed to lead. Hospital life has its own language, and Kelly learned it quickly. She memorized names, routines, shift changes, and numbers that suddenly carried immense weight. The scent of antiseptic became familiar, as did the rhythmic hum of machines and the quiet professionalism of nurses who carried compassion without performance. Doctors spoke in measured tones about treatments meant to slow progression, to buy time, to create space for hope. Kelly took notes, asked questions, and learned how to live inside uncertainty without letting it consume her. The hospital became a second home, built not on comfort, but on resolve. While the family navigated private fear, the public watched from a distance that felt uncomfortably close. Cameras appeared, headlines speculated, images circulated without context or permission. Kelly found herself living in two worlds at once, one where Mark slept under fluorescent lights, and another where his illness became material for conversation. Attempts to shape the narrative felt fragile. Statements offering gratitude and requesting privacy did little to slow the tide. The gap between truth and assumption widened, and the family learned that silence, while necessary, often
Then came the
invites
night
noise.
everything shifted. The crisis arrived swiftly, the way emergencies do, collapsing hours into moments. A sudden fever, alarms cutting through the steady hum of the ward, staff moving with urgent precision. Mark was transferred to intensive care, and the ground seemed to drop beneath them. The ICU was an entirely different world, defined by glass walls, beeping monitors, and a relentless awareness of fragility. Doctors explained complications carefully, emphasizing infection and strain, assuring the family that nothing had been missed. Fear deepened, but clarity emerged alongside it. This was serious, and pretending otherwise was no longer possible. There are limits to endurance, even for those who appear unbreakable. Kelly reached hers quietly, stepping into a hallway to take a call, her mind overloaded with information and responsibility. The collapse was not dramatic, but profoundly human. A moment of dizziness, a loss of balance, the floor rising to meet her. Nurses responded immediately, offering reassurance without judgment. It was not weakness, it was the natural consequence of carrying too much for too long. For the first time, the weight she bore became visible even to herself. Recovery rarely follows a straight line. The days that followed were marked by watchful patience. Progress revealed itself in small victories, stable vitals, moments of recognition, charts bending in the right direction. The family learned to celebrate quietly, protecting hope while refusing to let it outrun reality. Meals shared in waiting rooms tasted different, flavored with gratitude for simple continuity. Humor returned cautiously, not as denial, but as resistance. Life continued in fragments, rebuilding strength inch by inch. When Mark was finally moved out of intensive care, it felt like crossing a threshold. The danger had not vanished, but the immediate storm had softened. His strength returned slowly and unevenly, shaped by the demands of treatment. Kelly transformed his space where she could, softening edges, guarding his energy with gentle authority. The children adapted once more, stepping into roles that balanced care and practicality. Each contributed differently, but with the same intention, to make recovery possible without pressure. As weeks passed, the public conversation shifted. Silence gave way to measured updates. Speculation faded into respect. Kelly's return to work was not triumphant, but deliberate. She spoke honestly, not about prognosis, but about fragility, about how easily routines can collapse and how deeply relationships matter. The response was not curiosity, but empathy. The story was no longer about illness, it was about endurance, a victory that did not require applause. The breakthrough arrived without fanfare, improved scans, encouraging results, a future that no longer felt provisional. Mark's first walk down the hospital corridor was slow and unsteady, but it was his. Each step carried meaning far beyond movement. Homecoming followed, carefully planned and mindful of new realities. The house felt different, but alive again. What remained was not the life they had before, but something reshaped by gratitude, patience, and perspective. A family changed, but not broken. Living through uncertainty altered them permanently, but not destructively. Priorities clarified. Time became intentional. The scaffolding of life proved fragile, but the bonds beneath it endured. What emerged was not a return to normal, but a deeper understanding of what mattered most. The story did not end with certainty or closure, but with resilience, quiet strength, and the knowledge that love, when tested, can expand rather than fracture.